So, this is our project. I am Hudson.
And I'm Katie.
We hope you enjoy. So, our topic is annual after-tax income of families compared to the crime rate per 100,000 people. Our two strata are Quebec and Ontario, and what defines an economic family is a household containing two or more people. So, does annual income influence crime rate? Our independent variable is annual after-tax income. You can see that represented by the ethnic man sitting on a pile of gold. And our dependent variable is crime rate per 100,000. So our box and whisker plot, as we can see, it's pretty standard. It has 4 equal quadrants. Each whisker is roughly around half the size of the box. We can see that from the overall symmetry and the median line being directly in the center, equidistant from both whiskers, that there is a very even spread of data. That means in a real world application that throughout the years per term, crime has decreased or increased at very incremental and steady rates. And the short whiskers, which is mostly subjective, but if they're not too much bigger than the box, then we can pretty much say that there are no present outliers or skewing of data.
Okay, so these are our histograms. On the left is Quebec and on the right is Ontario. Each of these charts shows how many years had crime rates in different ranges between 3,500 and 7,000 per 100,000 people. Quebec's tallest bar is in the 4,000 to 4,500 range and reaches up to 8 years. That means 8 out of the 26 years Quebec's crime rate was between 4,000 and 4,500. The other bars are shorter, showing fewer years in those ranges. And in Ontario's graph, its tallest bar is also on the 4,000 to 4,500 range in 8 years. So both provinces often had crime rates around 4,000 and 4,500. So the mean from these graphs, Quebec's average crime rate was 5,262 and Ontario's was 5,291. And the median value of each of these are Quebec's is 5,692 and Ontario's is 5,192. When the median is higher than the average, as in Quebec, it shows that there's really low crime rates in the years pulling the average down. And when it's lower than the average, such as Ontario, it shows that there were some high crime rates pushing these years up. So the standard deviation, Quebec's standard deviation of 1,014 shows its crime rate stayed fairly close to its average values, and Ontario's standard deviation, which is 1,133, means its crime rates had a bit more variation around the average each year.
All right, so as you can see, we have a 4-series scatter plot, so it's a little hard to read. We have, on the legend, you can see that the blue and green lines are indicating crime in Quebec and income in Quebec, and the yellow and red indicate the crime in Ontario and the income in Ontario. The yellow line for Ontario is very similar to the crime in Quebec, so it's under there, so it's going to be a little hard to see. But what we can see from the graph, from both the figures and the graph, is that Quebec's data was a little more consistent. It shows a stronger correlation between the independent and dependent variables, whereas Ontario had a very slightly weaker by around 10%. But by looking at the graph, the figures aside, if you want to be able to tell how strong a correlation is, specifically for a negative correlation, you want to see how symmetrical it is laterally and horizontally. So as we can see, or you'd have to look really close, but for Quebec, which is the blue and green, the two series are more symmetrical horizontally and laterally, meaning that there is a stronger influence on the dependent for the independent variable. But overall, both have a very steady decrease in crime as annual income increases for both strata.
Okay, so does annual after-tax income affect crime rates? So both our correlation figures and graphs show a negative correlation between rising after-tax incomes and crime rates in both strata. However, based off that, we cannot conclude that there is a cause and effect relationship. Why is that?
Okay, great question. Why is that? First being confounding variables. So that is a variable that is unseen that could be an alternative explanation to why there is a correlation. So an example of this could be employment rates. Maybe it is actually the employment rate that keeps people away from crime and not directly after-tax income itself. Another would be welfare programs. Maybe regionally in Quebec, the reason why crime rates are a little lower is because the government is much better at supporting the working class. Last being social charities or outreaches. It's similar to welfare programs, but maybe just Quebec takes better care of the citizens so that they don't have to resort to crime. So the second being external factors. That's just any other factor outside of the related topic that could skew our data. For example, tax evasion. We got our data sets from Stats Canada, and a lot of the data is taken from administrative records from the government or census surveys. So if people evade more taxes in Ontario, that could result in a higher annual income for that strata. And third, biases. There is response bias and non-response bias. For example, if an officer doesn't report a crime, that's going to affect the annual crime rate of the strata. So maybe in Quebec, crime is lower because officers are just more lenient, more chill, and they let people go. And the non-response bias being if people just don't respond to the surveys. As we mentioned, Stats Canada relies heavily on public censuses, so it could just be that people in Quebec or Ontario chose to participate at different rates. Read the last name.
So therefore, while our results do highlight a meaningful trend, any claims about income driving crime reductions must remain tentative unless confirmed by more controlled multivariable studies.